Welcome, my lords, to the White City, where you will learn more about Middle-earth and discover differences and similarities between the Rings of Power show and Tolkien's books, and whether Amazon's show, episode by episode, is worth watching. I'm Philip Dutt, your host, and I'll be joined by Matt Vandervoort and Mark Schaefer. I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the White City Podcast. Today I have with me Nathan Danneker, and we're going to be talking about something pretty unique to what we've ever talked about before in the White City Podcast, and it's going to kind of revolve around what makes Lord of the Rings meaningful, and how kind of like what's like in a sense, what do people get out of it? So Nathan, I guess some questions I have are like, how did you get interested in Lord of the Rings, and things like, did you see the movies first or read the books first? And
So it was a long time ago, probably elementary school. I do not remember if I read The Hobbit or the series first, but definitely I was a middle schooler around that time when the Peter Jackson series came out. So that was my main introduction. There were several times that we would have just movie nights of just watching Lord of the Rings, the extended cut, obviously, because that's the only correct one.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I believe I probably read some of the books first. I mean, they're massive books, so especially for middle schooler like me, I don't think I finished them before I watched the movie. But I definitely would rewatch them, everything else. And then after the movie, I definitely got into more of I was more curious about the other stuff. So the library only had The Hobbit, so I read The Hobbit and The Silmarillion. So I've read those two. I've not read any of the other stuff. I am going off of very long-term memory, because I think the last time I read any of these books was college.
Yeah.
So if I get anything wrong, you feel free to correct me.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll try to be on top of it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So when you think about Lord of the Rings and like what really makes you like interested in it or like a fan of it, like kind of like describe that. Like, is there like characters or specific like things about like all the mythology it's based off of, or those kind of things?
I think as a kid, I just mostly I just liked because especially with the movies, it was like they did such a good job with representing everything, the epic battles and everything else. It was like, as a young boy, that's what I got. That's what attracts you to stuff. You like the big monsters, especially the Mumakil.
Yeah,
those are still the Mumakil in those movies are probably some of my favorite huge monsters I've ever seen. And so that's probably what drew me in initially. What kept me around was just more of the character aspect of it and everything else. Some of my favorite parts was in the book when Samwise is taking Frodo up the mountain. I forget exactly how he describes it, but like basically Sam comes to the point where he's like, I've given up, but I've given up so hard that I'm going to keep going. And he's like, I am so done with this trip. We're going to finish this. And so I just like that idea of like, people persevering through crazy experiences and everything else and still like pushing through to get everything done. And definitely, especially in the Silmarillion was actually what kind of kept me in everything else, because like reading about the elves and like their, like, especially with Fëanor and his family, like their arrogance and everything else. And that's like, oh, hey, this, it's a very relatable character and everything else of like, he was a master at what he did and he got too stuck up in what he could do and it bit him. And so just like relating to that and everything else, and like just like the conflict and everything else, getting into that. So that's really was cool. Some of the stories in the Silmarillion are weird. So that one was like, why did Tolkien write this? But overall, I liked it, and the series, the trilogy, and The Hobbit definitely are good. I did watch the Hobbit, the Peter Jackson Hobbit films, all three of them. I would say it probably could have been 2, but those are still fine films.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, what's neat about Lord of the Rings is it can be attractive to anybody,
Yes.
Not just like crazy nerds who are just gonna be laying on their beds all day or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. Like, I know people who all across the board like Lord of the Rings, and liberal or not, like, and that's probably like what we're gonna kind of be talking about, like politics
Mm-hmm.
wise.
Because it's politics season in America, and we need to throw more gas on the
Yeah,
fire.
yes, yes, that's it's true, it's true. So just to kind of like dive into this, so for anybody who doesn't know, it kind of might be a little subtle unless you're really have been looking for it and you're really like a Lord of the Rings fan. During the Republican National Convention, there was somebody from MSNBC here. Her name's Rachel Maddow, just to try to get all the facts straight here. And she was from MSNBC during the convention, and this is a quote from her that the Lord of the Rings is a sort of favorite cosmos for naming things and cultural references for a lot of far right and alt right figures, both in Europe and the United States. Peter Thiel names all these things after Tolkien figures in places like his company Palantir, for example. So Peter Thiel is like a mentor in a way to who is like now like the Republican like vice president. So J.D. Vance also named his firm after an elven ring called Narya. So I think the big thing with this is probably that because J.D. Vance is vice president and he's,
Vice president candidate.
vice president candidate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. Let's
Mm-hmm.
make that straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is not a politics podcast.
Yes, obviously.
But anyways, so him being conservative and now also like a Lord of the Rings lover,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. I think that was just one thing that Rachel Maddow was trying to fire at him. So I guess the thing is like, and that's kind of like what I was referring to earlier about what to you made like Lord of the Rings like so great, and what what brought you the interest there,
Mm-hmm.
because Rachel Maddow I think is trying to connect there is that, oh, Lord of the Rings is just a right wing favorite, and so then like if you hear that, like what does that, I guess, does that make sense? Is that something that is like something that can be applied like to conservatism? Is Lord of the Rings, does that make sense? I guess.
I think it's the hard part is people will, especially in political season, they will attack anything they can if they think they can get an edge. So obviously they're going to attack a lot of different other things and everything else. This is probably just one thing that they brought up and everything else. So I think for the right wing side, there's a lot of things. At least with, once again, I'm speaking from an American. I don't know the European right wing side or any of the other countries, but there's definitely aspects of Tolkien's story that would appeal to a traditional right winger. Like, you know, there's a good and bad side. There's, you're trying to protect your own lands. There's a respect for good authority, and at the same time, like, if business is doing good, you're doing good, like in the Shire and everything else. Like, people were selling, buying, and it's like it's a happy place and everything else. And like, the kind of the idea of a Shire would be like, that's the idea of a happy place that the right wing would people. But also at the same time, there's other stuff in Tolkien that I think current modern American right wingers would probably not jive with as much. For example, the
Okay.
one thing I was thinking of was like the forests and the Ents and them trying to protect the forest from everybody using the forest. Whereas like especially I feel like in our current age, there's a lot of right wingers that want to use all of our natural resources as much as possible and not try to conserve everything, just use it, which is definitely much more of like a Saruman thing, which was not a good that was a good one.
Right.
And there's, speaking of the one which was interesting, which was the Palantir. The interesting thing was the Palantir it was good as long as the source was good. But once Sauron captured the source, all the other Palantir got corrupted.
Hmm.
So that's just you know, a wary. I don't know if Peter Thiel. I don't know him that much, but I'm just curious if he knew that story of like, hey, do you have your source right? Make sure your source is right, because if you're if the source is wrong and you're spreading out like all the other Palantir, then you're just spreading more bad. So yeah.
Yeah. So what is he really doing?
I don't know. As I said, I've never
Yeah.
I don't really follow politics
Yeah,
that
I got
much.
you. Right.
But I definitely think there's like aspects of everything that can be definitely good. Like definitely with family and Tolkien, like family is very important. People, you honor your family and everything else. People honor, that the parents are like that and everything else. In most cases, except for I guess in the movies with Arwen and I'm blanking on his name.
Elrond?
Elrond, yes, that's the only one where you can kind of see like the conflict.
Okay.
But I forget if that's really there in the books. I guess sort of because Elrond did not want Arwen falling in love with Aragorn, but it happened.
Right.
So there's like that where it's like the family is respected and everything else, but also the same thing with like Aragorn and Arwen. Like Aragorn didn't like try to force her hand or anything like until she was ready to admit like ready to accept him and everything else. Then they got married. So like that's definitely much more of a conservative idea of like you wait, and then also just the idea of like having like a strong defense of your lands and everything else, like which is the big thing of like what happens in Gondor and Rohan of like they're protecting your lands and everything else, and also the idea of this is the one thing I come out especially now is when Éomer in the movies, like he's going around and hunting the orcs and Uruk-hai and everything else, and his dad is still affected by Grimtongue and like I'm going to protect my land even if nobody else does. It's
His
like
uncle.
yeah, his uncle. Yes, thank you. But like, that's very much a current American right wing thing of like, if nobody else is going to protect my land, I'm going to protect my land.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. Some very traditional values there.
Yes.
And I mean, I think a lot of people would consider like all these things very good that's coming out of Lord of the Rings. A lot of the major themes, just like some big takeaways there. Like friendship, leadership, like those kind of things. And I think are pretty big in the storyline and all. So one thing that I've kind of thought about with all this is, and tell me your sense of this too, is that like calling like Lord of the Rings even like conservative or even like right wing, I think like misses the point. So I think like because then like not just like that it necessarily would be like making it political, but also that it's kind of causing it to be kind of in a box of like, oh, like we love it because it's conservative, but it's like I feel like there's a lot more behind it than just, hey, this is conservative and it has conservative values, which like may be true, but yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would say the values. I mean, obviously Tolkien was a Christian, so he had values that the conservatives in at least America somewhat hold still. I mean, obviously things have changed in the past like 70 years since Tolkien wrote the books. But the big thing with I would say with Tolkien is like it's like good stuff that everybody would like to like. I think both liberals and conservatives are like, hey, you want good friends that will stick by you and through up through everything. Like both of them will agree, like, yeah, we want things, we want allies that will stick with us. And I think at both times, like, I think both liberals and conservative would agree that one of the things that comes up is when I remember in the second movie when Theoden asks where Gondor is, and then in the third movie, the beacons get lit. And Gondor still hasn't done anything. But Theoden's like, no, I'm going to be the better person and honor the alliance and go and help them. And like I think that was definitely something that both the liberals and conservatives would agree that is something that's good.
Right.
Is like I'm going to honor the agreement I made and stick to the word that we gave. And so some things are like that. There's other things. I mean, as I said, like traditional values, like definitely traditional values. I mean, like if I said that some of the stories in the Silmarillion are wild. So like that's definitely of like, oh, hey, it's a bog standard thing and everything else. It's like, yeah, that's because Tolkien's gotten so popular. It's like, I've heard other people complain about Tolkien being like, Tolkien is so popular, it's ruining our fandom because we can't tell different stories because everyone assumes it's like Tolkien, not how we want to say it.
Right,
And so
right.
it's like that's the problem is like when Tolkien's the standard, it's like, when you want to rebel, you say, oh, normally when you want to rebel, you say that's the conservative old fogey stuff. The reason why it's Tolkien stuck around for
Interesting.
so long is like it's because the story speaks to us like after all these
Right.
years, and so and then some people that's just not comfortable for them is like having something that speaks to them that long.
Hmm.
So
Interesting. It has to be something like new
yes,
and like modern in a sense, maybe.
yeah,
Huh. Well, that's good.
hmm
Yeah, I can definitely agree. I think one thing that like we've also talked about like
hmm
in previous episodes is how like Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, all those stories are made great by more than just like one thing, right? It's not just like mythology or history
yeah,
or like the worldview, Christian worldview, but it's like all those things connected. And like some of those things that make it so good aren't even like they're like some of those things that make it so good you can't even connect to like
hmm
necessarily like Christian values in a sense,
hmm
right? Because like Tolkien
hmm
was really good at languages, right?
yeah,
That was like his thing. I
hmm
mean, the only reason why the Lord of the Rings was like made was because he like made up his own languages and was like, hey,
hmm
I want somebody to speak this. I'm gonna
yeah,
create my own world to like speak these languages. And that's like what one of the things that makes it so great,
hmm
and that has nothing to do with like politics or with like
yeah,
I mean, even with like
hmm
faith. But again, like there are all those different things too that make it so great. Not just one
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I don't know the history, but I know him and C.S. Lewis were obviously very close friends, and I wonder how much of I don't know the timeline, but I'm wondering how much of seeing C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia taking off got him the idea of like, oh, I should create my own world, and so kind of that idea. Because I mean, like when it's two creative people together, you tend to rub off on each other. I've experienced that with other hobbies and everything else and other fandoms. Whereas like one person gets super excited about something and it just kind of rubs off. And so, yeah. But yeah, I definitely would agree that like a lot of the themes are generally just what humans approve of, in the story. Like wherever you go in the world, you find people who, they want people who they can trust. They want people who they can rely on. They want to fight back against whatever they consider evil. People have different things of whatever evil, but they want to fight against evil. They want evil not to win. And so, and then they celebrate the people who do, if they can't do it themselves, they celebrate the people who do it for them. So it's just kind of like universal humanness.
Right.
So,
Yeah. What's also interesting is like going into the second season for the Rings of Power show.
hmm
It's kind of a side note, but I was really actually pretty like excited about
hmm
the trailer, like the official trailer.
hmm
When it showed, I was like saw the Ents.
hmm
I think there was there a troll in there? I can't remember. And there are some other things.
hmm
Tom Bombadil is going to
Oh,
be in it.
okay.
So
Is
that
this is
was
this the first time he's on screen? Because yeah,
yes,
okay, yeah.
yes. So like some of those things, I'm like, wow, this is going to be great.
hmm
But then listening to the actors like and some of the clips from like the Comic Con, which is like
hmm
they released the
hmm
trailer at the Comic Con. It was just like okay, it almost seemed like they were trying to bring it back to like a modern setting and talk about the characters and kind of like in more like modern terms and like and to like how the way they're feeling or the way they're like trying to express themselves and you know and it just seemed less of a like I'm like this character in this role
Yeah.
trying to be in this world
hmm
and then from there like you know expressing kind of like how this character would talk or relate to other people in the world, not necessarily based off of
hmm
like our values today necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, humans have done that all the time. I mean, there's plenty of stories where people take a historical story and they'll spin it to match whatever they're trying to push in current modern times, even though it may not exactly fit what they're saying, but history only tells you so much. Same thing with Tolkien. I mean, Tolkien did write a lot, but he only had so much. And so it's like you can always, and also at the same time, people can just take whatever they want and just go with whatever they want to go with it. I've not watched, as is also on the side note, I've not watched the season 1. I we'll see. But Amazon ruined another one of my fandoms, and I did not trust them with the Lord of the Rings. So I was like, I'm not going to be disappointed.
Yeah. Wait. You said another one? Was that
another one? Yeah.
Wheel of Time?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen it at all.
Yeah. No. Don't.
Okay.
Yeah. It's. Yeah, I didn't realize it, but this is a sidebar for Real Time. Apparently, one of the actors left mid-season because he was so frustrated with the writers and the way they were going. And I was like, it was a very crucial main character, and I was like, why is this happening? And then I heard about it, and I was like, oh no, oh no. So hopefully that doesn't happen for Rings of Power.
Oh,
I hope that doesn't happen. Hopefully they do treat it right, and hopefully they heard the feedback, and they tell a good story, because there's definitely sometimes sometimes there's also the other thing is like you're trying to tell a story in 8 episodes, and there's going to be things where you're going to leave it out. I mean, I remember the famous one. I think it was the Zack Snyder Justice League, where like the original cut that went to cinema was panned everywhere, and then they released they called it the Snyder Cut, which is like an extra 40 minutes of like extra stuff that they had to cut out because they needed to get down to cinematic length, and it changed the movie. And it's like, that could be the same thing with the show, is like, oh hey, this is what we had to do, but we have to get it into 8 episodes, and we can't make a 9th. We would love to make a 9th, but we can't. So
we gotta cut things.
Yeah. So
yeah. Interesting.
So yeah. So and that's also the way of like, same thing with the other stuff is like you could see that where like, people want to tell something and everything else, or you could say, I mean, and also at the same time, like if people. The other thing I will say is kind of going back to like the conservative thing is like, people have in a mind of like what they think Lord of the Rings is. And if whatever somebody else thinks of it or somebody else thinks of it is not exactly what they think of it, they think they're, impinging on their wholly like the right way to think about Lord of the Rings. And you are all wrong. And I'm going to call you whatever my preferred, derogatory slur is.
Yeah.
And so like, that could also be the way of like, I'm trying to think of a creative way to insult somebody, so I'm going to insult their fandom. And it's like, yeah, that's really just whatever. I don't like it. But we're in political season, so it is what it is. It's sad.
It is sad. And it's one of those things hopefully too where I listened to a couple of like podcasts, like making some comments on it. You just hope that nobody then who like kind of finds out about Lord of the Rings like for the first time or something is like, oh, well, that's an all like right-wing thing. I don't want to watch that. So it's a misrepresentation.
Yeah,
a huge misrepresentation.
Yeah, it's
what
it
is.
Yeah, definitely. It's
it's.
I would say of the two American, like it's not either an American conservative or American liberal. It is something completely different. I mean, obviously Tolkien was British, so obviously he's also coming from a different Western culture.
Yeah.
So he would have and he was, once again, grew up during the World War, was alive during the World Wars and everything else, so that would change his perspective on everything and everything else. Whereas I imagine a lot of us, unless at least in America, I think the only war you would probably be in would be the Iraqi or Afghanistan veterans. And even then, there wasn't as many people who were affected as in the world wars with Britain.
Right.
Like, Britain, like, the whole country was affected.
Yeah.
Like, nobody was not. Whereas, in America, with those two latest conflicts, like, some people weren't affected at all.
Right.
You saw the headlines, but you're like, I don't know this person, so it's sad that they died, but I can only be that much sad. Like, I don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, with Britain, it's like, no, I know that boy was my neighbor's son or something, which was like a whole different experience.
Right. And that was something that was definitely a very, very much of like a crucial impact on a lot of people, and you can tell that with Tolkien as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in his life. But yeah, I think like part of that too is why what makes like
Mm-hmm.
Lord of the Rings so great is that Tolkien is drawing from his experiences,
Mm-hmm.
things that he really enjoyed, like history and whatnot, and how that comes through on his writings. Yeah.
And also he saw in both world wars, he saw that eventually the evil the evil lost, but also at the same time, like kind of what he was talking about with the Silmarillion, like also at the same time there's people on the good side who are also like not super holy. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like obviously people like Morgoth is evil, but
Right.
Feanor and his sons and the elves who go to fight him are not that much better.
Yeah. Right.
So
He's
yeah,
yeah.
so yeah, so it's like he understood the reality probably from seeing the war. It's like conflict just it's just bad. It hurts everything. And then those who can come out of the conflict and still rule righteously, kind of like what Aragorn and the other people did at the end of the trilogy.
Yeah.
Those are the people you should admire.
Right. Yeah. Well, thanks Nathan for
Yep.
coming on and giving your 2 cents on everything.
Oh,
And
thanks.
yeah, I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Nice to have a different face
Yeah.
every once in a
I may
while.
get inspired to watch season 1 so I can be on your season 2 reviews.
Hey man, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks everyone
Yes.
for tuning in, and hope to catch you guys for our next review of the official trailer for the second season of The Rings of Power. Alrighty. Thanks for visiting the White City. Before you leave, please subscribe to our podcast and check us out at thewhitecitypodcast.com. We're on YouTube or Facebook under the tag @The White City Podcast.